just make me so happy.
Mr. Chairman, if I
You
can
as well.
for a second. Council, because of the breakfast that morning, the Veterans Breakfast, and we all like to participate, maybe we meet early and walk as a team, even before, I was thinking 7:30 or something, because the breakfast is at, I think, 11 o'clock. But why don't we look at it? Okay, thank you.
All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Charter Review Committee. Sitting on behalf of the council will be myself, Council Manning Martin, and Council McGinn. And of course, in this topic, I would certainly appreciate participation from councilors as a whole. The purpose tonight is really to discuss the process from here. Tonight I did not anticipate coming here to select candidates. We have received applications from, I believe, 8 candidates in total, of which some were in your packet, some were on your desk. And I kind of wanted to get a sense from the committee and the councilors as a whole, the process that they'd like to use for selection. We get to select 3 of those 8. There's a multitude of ways we can do it. I would think that the one thing that I would like to ask the council to consider is when people have put their name out there to participate on a volunteer basis for a task like this, which is no walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. It's a work committee, not one of those prestige committees you kind of get to grunt it out. I would like to ask the council to consider allowing us to invite everyone who applied to the next council meeting and to provide each person the dignity and respect of a 3 to 5 minute presentation so that you can hear why they want to participate before we do any type of a selection. So if that's favorable to everyone here, I'd like to know, and then we can then determine how we want to go about selecting the actual candidates after they've presented for themselves. So I'm opening that to some discussion, and then we can talk about how you want to do the selection process after that. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's an excellent suggestion, Councilor Gravel. We have some great candidates. I think, is the number up to 8? And is the door closed? The door's closed. Okay, so all the applications that we've received are the ones that we'll be considering. So I'm impressed with the number of people that have reached out and have submitted interest, and we have some really 8 quality candidates that really wish to serve, so I'm really pleased with that. And I think your suggestion is excellent, that we invite them and we hear even more about them. And, some of the candidates I do not know. I've never heard of them before, so I look forward to meeting them and learning more about who they are and why they want to serve the city, and also learn even more about folks that have been around and hear a little bit more about why they do what they do. So I think that's a great suggestion.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just taking maybe one or two steps back, this committee that's proposed, we haven't really established that or legitimized that as the approach we're taking, because we have we received a kind of a scope of services from the Collins Center, and within that they identified a timeline, and then they kind of in parentheses here, the center advises a 7-member committee, 4 appointed by the mayor, 3 appointed by the city council. That's a suggestion, and going back to the direction that we got from the city solicitor with respect to the home rule petition process, Section 8 does not provide detailed instructions regarding the preparation of a home rule petition charter. So there's ambiguity around that, and I think just to kind of legitimize this approach, probably the first step would be to accept the recommendation of the Collins group to establish this 7-member committee, and then move forward with the process of how to fill out that committee. Because again, it's just a suggestion. I don't have any particular problem with it, but I think we need to say to the affirmative, if it's the will of the council, ultimately, yes, we agree with that, or no, we don't. And, maybe somebody might think we want 9 members, or then, again, we're getting no strong direction from state law that takes us there, so we need to take ourselves there and then move forward. So that would be my first recommendation as an output from this committee would be to make a recommendation to the council of the whole as to accepting that recommendation from the Collins Committee for a 7-member committee, 4 appointed by the mayor and 3 appointed by the city council. I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn, and that's a very good point, and I appreciate you bringing that up. You've heard the motion by Councilor McGinn to accept the recommendation of a 7-person committee, 4 appointed by the mayor, 3 to be appointed by the city council. On the recommendation, any discussion? Roll call?
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Other items, Councilor McGinn?
Well, I think, again, just to nail down the process here a little bit better and to make sure that, somebody doesn't feel like they were wronged down the line, in that we have now just established that or that's our recommendation to the full council. I think we should recommend some rules that go along with that. Like Councilor Manning Martin a moment ago asked, is the window closed? And you kind of said yes, but we haven't really said that's a rule, that there's a deadline. So if somebody comes in later and says, hey, I really wanted to do this, and they might challenge that was kind of arbitrary. So I think, the way by which we received these letters of interest, I guess we would call them, was by your motion to encourage people to come forward.
Well, we advertised, and asked that they come forward, but one thing that would solve that issue is that you move to accept this slate of candidates, and that their names all be put in nomination, and that the process is then closed at that point in time. So if you'd like to make that motion, I'm more than happy to support it.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was headed, which is where I think we need to kind of formally close it out and we'll structure the motion in the manner that you just did, Mr. Chairman. So moved.
So the motion is to accept the following candidates and put their name into nomination for selection by the council as a whole. Elfie Wilkins, Christopher Gilbert, Keith Doucette, Rob Mareschi, Stephanie Peach, Peter Bakula, Sudi Smola, and Michael Schultz. You've heard the motion. Comments? Councilman Manning Martin.
Yes, and just for the folks at home, I don't think it was mentioned, Thank you, Council Rossignol. We did post it in this Salem News, PBD Advocate, and the Weekly, and on our website that the council was looking for applicants, as you know. And the deadline was posted on there by Thursday, October 11th was the deadline. So the ones that we have now in the can, as we're voting in, I'm comfortable that we've notified everybody, and everybody that has been interested has submitted by now, so thank you.
Councilman McGinn.
Yeah, so thank you, Council Manning Martin, for referring back to that advertising. So are we extending the deadline for those for the two that came in after that advertised deadline? I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but
I would. I mean, I think people are good enough to volunteer. We shouldn't fall on the sword of a date. And, we just know that as of tonight, the motion is that what we have is what we have, and it's closed beyond this point.
I'm fine with that.
On the motion, roll call?
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Manning Martin, Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Mr. McGinn.
And then just as we look at this project, or, I think at least in terms of how I would approach it, I look at this as kind of a task team, and, you're looking for people with complementary skill sets and so forth. So I'd like to know what the mayor's appointments are going to look like. I guess he's going to follow his own process in terms of how he is going to select them, but, I think we need to determine if, like other appointments, if we need to vote on those ultimately. I realize this is different than an appointment to a board or commission, but I think that's something we should consider as part of under the process framework here. And I'd like to see some of those names so that, and have the same type of understanding about their background and skill set and what they're going to bring to the party, so we can kind of have an understanding of what the composition of the group would look like in its entirety, and how they might work together, so that, obviously we're all collectively looking for the best possible result here. So, and to get to that end, we're going to want a strong team. So, and the mayor's got the majority of the appointments. So I think that's something I wanted to just get out there as a discussion point, as to whether, we think that the council should have to ratify those appointments, or if we just accept those, and or what the timing is of those appointments, so that we can see some information on those individuals, regardless of how they come to us.
Well, I would certainly suggest we can make a motion here tonight and request the mayor submit his applicants for our review as well, and we'll submit ours for his review. I don't know that we can, in the process, it would seem to not make sense that we would have to ratify his, but fundamentally, I understand what you're saying. It would be good to know, so that we get a holistic set of people. So if you want to make that in the form of motion, I have no problem.
Yeah, before I make that motion, Mr. Chairman, so you had indicated you thought it would make sense to have the individuals for the council's candidates to give a few minutes overview on their background at the next meeting. I think that's what you were envisioning. Would you envision that we would then have perhaps another period of time to consider what we heard before voting, or would you? I'm just trying to. That just kind of plays into my thinking as far as when we would want the mayor's information.
I think I consider the two buckets differently. I think when people come and they respectfully present why it is that they want to participate and what they think they bring to the party, that we then owe them, and we should do right away, the vote to select the candidates. If you want to request that the mayor have the same people come and present from his, I'll go again. I think that kind of defeats the idea of their selections versus ours. But yeah, I would expect that we would vote that evening when they present. And if the next meeting is too close because it's only a week away, then the following meeting might be an opportune time, and that would give the mayor enough time to get us his selections so that you can see who he's selecting, and we can compare the skill sets. But I certainly don't want to, have people come present, send them away, and then vote. I'd like to be as transparent as possible so they see a voting process that is reflective of their time that they spent coming here, so.
Thank you. So just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that the mayor's appointments also present. I just wanted to know when you would anticipate having information on his appointments so that we could kind of have some sense of what the entire body would look like. So it sounds like you think that's realistic for the next, that we would have that.
I think if it makes people feel more comfortable to have that information ahead of time, because I don't know if the mayor's even made his selection yet or how he's gotten his pool. But certainly we can have the people come, not to the next meeting, but the following meeting. So that gives us, 3 weeks, which is plenty of time to notify them. They can prepare. And then in that amount of time, I'm certain that we can get something from the mayor. So we would have both things in hand at the time. So if not the next meeting, but when is the meeting after? What's the following one?
For November?
Yeah, it would be our November meeting.
Well, our next meeting, November, it's the 8th, 15th. Then our last meeting for the year is December 13th.
So I
regular
would
meeting.
say the November 8th meeting we'll invite. So if somebody could make a motion to ask the clerk to please invite candidates under nomination, the ones we read before, to come to our November 8th meeting to do a 3 to 5 minute presentation, that would be great.
So moved.
On the motion, comments? Councilor Turco.
Just a point of interest, I know that we have a Public Services Committee meeting that night also. I just want to make sure that you see how many subcommittee meetings we have so that we don't have residents, waiting.
I would suggest it's part of the regular committee. I would ask the president to make it a part of the agenda for the regular committee meeting.
Thank you.
Councilor Sasslaw?
And the only question I had regarding the mayor's appointees is, I think the timeline is great, the 3 weeks. I was just not gravely concerned, but as far as if there were some people who might be on his list that also applied, so that we didn't have any duplication, but I think that'll flush itself out. But I just wanted to bring that to the table.
You mean people cutting the angles, right? That's a good point. Any other comments? On the motion? Oh. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. And Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, and then the follow-on motion would be that by that November 8th meeting that we have a communication from the mayor on defining his appointees. So moved.
On the motion, any comments? Seeing none. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Oh, Councilman Manning Martin.
Not on the motion. The motion,
On that's. Councilman Manning Martin.
since we're on a roll, can we talk a little bit about, and that was a good suggestion, Councilor McGinn. I'm glad that we'll get the mayor's nominations, his appointees in advance. That's a very good idea to compliment, so we can compliment and have a good team that represents the entire city. So on the voting process, now, I'm sure some members here have been either on the school committee or council when we had a vacant seat, and then we would have to vote on filling the vacant seat. And that can be a little uncomfortable for the candidates and the voting councilors, because it's public, and you're only voting, only one could get the seat, and say 3 to 5 people would come up and they'd speak, but you could only vote for one. In this instance, it's going to be a little different, so I'm wondering if we can do it a little differently, since we will be voting for 3. And I agree with you, Councilor Gravel, once we have them speak, we should vote on them the same night. But I was wondering if we could do it a little differently, and I suggest that we have the councilors submit a vote for 3 like a ballot, and then the top 3 vote getters would get those positions. So each council would vote for 3, and it would be public, would submit them, Tim would tally them, and then our votes would be public who we voted for, but the top 3 would get it. That way, you don't have people coming up, as David said, as Councilor Gravel said, it's can be kind of nerve-wracking and intimidating to go up and put yourself out there for such a role with the public and the television. A lot of people just aren't, up for that. They're not kind of wired that way, but they do it. And so I just thought we could have another way for them to go up and take a vote, and top 3 vote getters get it. And you don't get a situation where I've been in the past where 5 people come up and they go through the process, and 10 to 1, that, and some people don't get any votes because it's an odd process, and it's uncomfortable when you only get to vote for 1. So since we have a situation where we get to vote for 3, I was wondering if we could do it differently, and I propose we do it that way. So I'll just put that out there for discussion.
Since I've participated in that rolling vote process once, I didn't win, by the way. Didn't stop me from running again, but I did not win. It was a very awkward evening. I was it was a process for selection for school committee, and it was a round-robin thing at the city council. They put a name up for nomination, and it went around, and then, there were multiple names up, and it almost took, for one candidate to emerge, it almost took 4 or 5 rounds, because people were putting up the name, and then, if you didn't get enough votes, the name was down, then they'd put up another name, and the people who voted for that person wouldn't vote, and it was a very odd process. So, and it was uncomfortable for the people that were sitting there. I have no problem with a ballot process. It's kind of like an election. It can't be a secret ballot, if that's what you're looking for, but it's got to be a public ballot and a public tally. But at least there, I think people get a sense for, hey, I got to vote. So I don't have a problem with that, but I'll leave it to others to discuss.
But just for clarification, I definitely did not indicate that it would be private. I think I said ours would be disclosed and entered into record, just to make it more comfortable for the participants and the candidates, but absolutely public and transparent.
Councilman McGinn.
Yeah, I agree, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Manning-Marty. I agree wholeheartedly with the suggestion. That's exactly the direction I hoped we would go. 3 votes per councilor, that we do it. I think for some of the reasons you stated, as well as just from a fairness standpoint, I think that's the right approach. And I think that we should make it clear as an output of this committee, Mr. Chairman, that our recommendation is that this decision is made by the committee of the whole, that this is not, that we're not, that this subcommittee is not going to select candidates, winnow it down, and I know that's not what Councilor Manning Martin was suggesting, but just for the sake of clarity, that we are merely making a recommendation out of this committee as to how the committee of the whole will conduct this vote.
Right, no. The whole idea, the committee is making a recommendation. The recommendation is for a process. And the council of the whole can vote on that process, because I'll read out the motions at the next meeting. And if there's disagreement, amongst the councilors as to the process, again, it can be debated and changed. But my goal was to get everybody involved. Something of this nature is not something that a little group within a group decides on. I think the value of having 11 opinions in this can't be overstated. So, yes, the process would be, if we recommend the ballot process for selection, that's what the subcommittee is recommending, but it's going to be up to the whole council to make that decision.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd make that in the form of a motion that the recommendation of this subcommittee is that the committee of the whole elect the 3 city council appointees to this charter review committee by each casting 3 votes from the slate of from the candidates that have been put forward. So moved.
Heard the motion? Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
And I think that covers what I wanted to cover this evening. Is anybody in the committee or in the whole want to discuss anything further on this? Councilman McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just maybe what if any, role we see for this committee as that process is playing out. I mean, I think they're going to do their thing in a fairly autonomous and transparent manner. But do you envision any function for this committee to, monitor that, or to have any level of I don't per se, but I just wanted to get clarification around that from your perspective.
I don't perceive this committee having to do much more than receive progress reports, if there are any. Outside of that, I believe that, this committee, as I originally envisioned it, has served its purpose. It's gotten the process going. It has established a way for us to address the issues that wanted to be addressed, and we'll ultimately see the result. But I don't want, the whole idea is to not have the council influence any of the process. Let the process be conducted by the consulting source that we're paying, and then we'll reconvene as a council of the whole when we see the results. We do know ultimately it's up to us to either accept or reject the results of that committee. So I don't see any further need.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I didn't see much either, except I just keep kind of hearkening back to the direction we got from the city solicitor about how the home rule petition legislation doesn't provide a lot of direction. So we may reach a point where we need another recommendation out of this committee in terms of what votes are needed, or what, there may be, I think the legislature is ultimately going to have to decide if it goes before the voters. I think we probably heard that loud and clear from the Collins Center, that will more than likely happen. So I guess we're not quite ready to dissolve the committee, but I think your understanding and my understanding are somewhat similar in that it's a limited function here going forward as needed if there's some additional procedural or structural kind of things that need to be considered.
Yeah, it'll definitely be. The ad hoc stays in place through the end of the year, and, you know, we can look at the need to continue the ad hoc into next year. And, I mean, we're all learning from the process, so I think we'll know if we need to call an ad hoc committee meeting just for some clarification of something, but clearly I see it as marginal.
We're learning through the process, but we are also establishing the process. So I guess that's kind of the catch-22 here, is that without guidance, we have to establish what those rules are. And I think we've done a decent job tonight doing just that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your participation. Thank you all. I'll take a motion to adjourn.